Welcome, everybody. Hi, good evening, good morning, good afternoon. Welcome, everybody, to our twice monthly series of webinars regarding nature in Israel, here from the Society for the Protection of Nature in Israel, coming to you from Israel Live. I'm Jay Shofet, Director of Partnerships and Development. Special webinar tonight with our CEO, Iris Hann, and our Director of Climate Policy in the Society for the Protection of Nature, Dr. Tamara Lev. They last month were at the UN COP27 climate talks at Sharm El-Sheikh, and we're going to hear a report from what I call the climate front, the human front to combat climate change and the concurrent crucial issue of biodiversity loss. We're going to be talking about both those issues and how they connect largely. And I think we're going to be talking about the fun they had at COP. I mean, and not just fun. I hope they both enjoyed it. I get that sense. But the kind of fun that recharges your batteries and gives you new horizons and directions for work in the future, just based on the personal connections you make. It's so much about personal connections in this world. Anyway, welcome, everybody. We're 60 people. Welcome. We're live on Facebook as well. SPNI appreciates your interest, your support year-round, and especially at this time of year. Support before the calendar turns on December 31st would be greatly appreciated. We're raising money at our end-of-year campaign for nature-based solutions to the climate crisis. Solutions that we'll be talking about today, and that show really that the easiest, first, best way to combat climate change is to maintain healthy habitats, maintain our seas and oceans and wetlands, and restore them if we have to, and our grasslands and scrublands and forests, of course. And this sequesters and stores in the biomass, in the earth, on the land, in the water, 50% of the Earth's carbon, or more than 50% of the Earth's carbon. And we lose habitats and biodiversity at our great detriment. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. And we'll be getting going in just a minute. I want to thank everybody. Let us know in the chat where you're from. And hello from Michael in Brooklyn. We're curious and appreciate your support from all over the world. We'll be sending you some emails this month to ask for that support and tell you what we're doing. We have a lot going on here. It's an incredibly busy time in Israel, in general, end of the year, and of course, because we're waiting for government information to be formed. It's going to happen in the next couple of weeks, probably, almost certainly, and this government will pose many challenges, which I've written about. We've written about in the December newsletter coming out. You'll be getting it, many of you, by mail, but also by email. But the preview of that is just that it's the new government and their coalition agreements is looking to override in many ways, not just the court system in Israel, but in that the civil society, the NGOs, really trying to strip power from the NGOs, and specifically to strip power from some government authorities, the Ministry of Environment and the Nature and Parks Authority, that would help us advance sustainable policies in Israel and avoid really harmful policies. This is all coalition agreements. We don't know what's happening exactly yet, but we are watchdogging it with very bated breath and are ready to mitigate what we can mitigate. With your support, we thank you all very much for the support. Thanks especially to our board members, really dedicated board members, and our professionals, the few that they are in North America, in the United States and Canada, and also in the UK. Really appreciate so much going on, and I'll also mention here that for those who are on and haven't heard, our executive director in New York, Robin Gordon, currently she's a longtime executive director, now director of donor relations. She'll be leaving us in January, not till the end of January, so there's a little more time, but I just wanted to get that out there, and I'll let you know that more formally in a mail. But Robin, we we will miss you, and we salute you for 30 years of incredible work in North America. And thanks everybody. Hi, Maggie and Leon, our longtime board chair there. Leon Sokol in New Jersey. We got people coming from all over, from Florida and from Israel and from Queens and from Maryland and California and Toronto and Michigan and LA and all over. So a lot of people from Toronto, Princeton, New Jersey, and glad to have everybody with us, and people are still coming in. Up to close to 100 people now. So thank you, and let's get moving with no further ado. We'll be seeing a presentation and hearing from Iris and Tamara for about 45 minutes. Robin, thanks. We're going to miss you. I know you're going to miss everybody. I know you're not going anywhere. And if we have any meetings in Great Neck, we'll be probably using your house. So to get going today, we're going to talk about the UN climate change talks at Sharm El-Sheikh. Just a hop, skip, and a jump from Israel. With us is Dr. Tamara Lev and our CEO is Hann. Tamara is our Director of Climate Policy. She's here less than a year, I believe, in SPNI. Tamara is a lawyer by profession. She actually has a doctorate in law, specialized in environmental law. She comes to us from 7 years of experience in the Israel Ministry of Justice, and with a strong background on climate change law and regulation, and is moving us forward in many different areas in terms of our own climate policy. And also our CEO, Iris Hann. Many of you are familiar with her and seen her on these Zooms, if not met her in person. Unfortunately, we had a mission. Very fortunately, we had a great mission in Israel. Unfortunately, it was exactly the week that Tamara and Iris were in Sharm El-Sheikh. So you didn't get to meet these two people in person. Otherwise, you would have on the mission, and you will next mission. So come with us in March or next November, or maybe even this summer we'll be having a mission. Anyway, Iris is also a lawyer by profession. She's also a regional planner, an urban planner. She's been 7 years, I think, CEO of SPNI, and has really also been focusing a lot of her work on climate change. And of course, on the biodiversity loss. And we don't even want to mention climate change without mentioning biodiversity loss, because it's not getting talked about enough. Anyway, Tamara, we're happy to have you here and looking forward to the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jay, and good evening, good morning, or to everybody, wherever time zone you are. So yes, in today's presentation, we're going to talk to you a little bit about COP27. I'll start with some general background about what it is, these COPs and these conventions, and then Iris will give you some broad understanding and view of what we were doing in Sharm. I'm going to start talking about what is COP and what is climate convention and what was decided in this COP and what was not. So let's start. What is COP? So first of all, as some of you maybe know, but I want to make let's touch base on the same line. So the COP means Conference of the Parties. Who are the parties? The parties are the parties to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. So that is the full name would be UNFCCC, and we usually call it the Climate Change Convention. We would hear the Climate Change Convention, and that is a convention which is international law tool, a treaty that was signed originally in 1992. So that's 30 years ago. It was signed by 154 states back then. Today we have much more. We have today 197, I believe, that are signed. So 154 states decided back then in 1992 that the science and the scientists are sure enough that we have a problem, which is that we emit way too much emission, and that this is predicted to cause dangerous result if we do not start to do something about it. So back in 1992, they believed that we have to start arranging all kind of activities together and look into science and start to lower emission in order not to reach the place where when our interference with nature is dangerous, and dangerous to humankind, not dangerous to anything else. So that is 1992. The convention was signed in a summit that was called the Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro, one of the most famous international environmental law summits. And it took 2 years until it started to operate, because international treaties get into force only when there is a certain amount of states that signed them. So 1994, it started to actually work. It got into force, and it was arranged in the way that several conventions are made, which is we're deciding on some very general principles and very general aims, and then we are going to meet each other every year in conference of the parties to this convention, and we're going to adopt protocols, and we're going to decide more decisions. And therefore, since then, every year, the parties to this convention are meeting every time in a different place and adopt protocols and take decisions and try to get the world and the states into a better place in terms of climate. I think we can move on to the next one. Let me see if I have anything here. Okay, before I get to that, I will just say that the protocols that were adopted since then, since the convention was signed, we have several protocols that were more famous, like the Kyoto Protocol, and then of course the Paris Agreement, several decisions that were taken through these years that were states took upon themselves all kind of commitments, for example, to lower emissions, how much emission they are going to achieve in each year. But the results were very poor for many years. Paris Agreement, Paris COP27 was supposed to be very, it was very waited for. It was under the Obama administration, and indeed it got, it was the first time when a COP decision made clearly that we have to stop at 1.5 degree, and that for that we must start doing several things, and more specifically that we have to get to zero emission by 2050, and that's more or less was what decided in the Paris Agreement. That's already 2015, several years ago. Still, I have to say, since the fact that states are committing in this place, in these conventions, doesn't mean that they are going to do exactly what they commit. And Sharm El-Sheikh COP, which is 27 years already, actually more, I think 1 year was canceled because of COVID. So COP27 was very much anticipated because what states and what people around the world have understood, that it's not enough that we have decided in Paris Agreement that we are going to stop at 1.5 and that we have to get into zero emission by 2050. We must understand how we're going to do it. And so everybody thought, and what the big talks were before COP27 in Egypt is, are we going to, are the states going to decide on the way to implement the commitment? How are states going to reach to zero emission by 2050? That was the main question before COP was started. Now the question, what happened there? So a few words about what happened there. COP27 in Egypt was the first one, I think, in Africa, in Africa, or at least in the last few years. It was also the fact that it was in Africa was a major issue in the COP. And again, we thought, and people thought, that we're going to talk basically mostly about implementation. But actually what happened there are two things. One thing is that happened behind the scene, and that we hear only from people behind the scene, is that several countries, and most of them countries that are producing oil and gas, were pushing very hard to soften the decision about 1.5 degrees. So there was a big battle behind the scene about not softening that target, and it was succeeded. The countries, the umbrella countries, the United States, European countries were insisting and achieved that goal. But that is a goal only not to soften what was already decided. Beside that, the other main thing that was talked about, maybe some of you heard about it, is what we're calling the loss and damages. And I'll talk about this in a second. I'll just run over the main things that were in the decision. You have to understand that when a conference like that is taking place, the big, big rooms where many people from many countries are sitting, basically lawyers from all the governmental offices, and they sit and they negotiate, and somebody's offering to take a certain decision, and then everybody are reacting, and then they start to word things. It's a very, I would say, technical, lots of technical issues are going on there. And at the end of the day, they have several decisions usually, and they adopt it. Right? That means the countries adopt the decision. So there are several decisions. Not all of them are extremely interesting to the public, even though all of them are important. But the major decision is the cover decision. There is a mistake here at the top. It should be cover decision. So the cover decision was named the implementation plan. That is the name of the cover decision. And it says several things, for example, about science and urgency. So the state welcomes the contribution of working group to the report of the IPCC. What does this mean? I bring just several examples. I want you to see that, first of all, the decisions are very diplomatically worded, because this is a diplomatic kind of event and decisions. So the decision, the state welcomes the contribution, then they enhance, they resolve, they emphasize. This is the language of the decisions. When the state welcome the contribution of the working group, that means that they basically accept the reports that the IPCC published about what is the situation right now, how dangerous is it, where are we standing, what should we do. We can move on to the next slide, and we'll see that other decisions that were accepted about mitigation, for example. So the decision is to call upon parties to accelerate the development and deployment of technologies, the adoption of policies. You can see it's very soft. There was nothing really new about the mitigation. They did mention nature several times, and since we are a nature protection organization, I will read that. So, for example, in the cover decision, which is not long, so that's important, they emphasize the importance of protecting, conserving, and restoring nature and ecosystem to achieve the Paris Agreement, the 1.5 Celsius goal, including through forest and other terrestrial and marine ecosystems acting as sinks and reservoirs. So we do have in this decision, again, acknowledgement of the importance of nature. It's not new, but we're happy to have it again. Again, in the adaptation, they had the same thing, nothing new, but they do emphasize the importance of protecting, conserving, and restoring water and water-related ecosystem. So we do have nature as part of it. Again, nothing new in this sense in this COP. The other thing that was important and that I mentioned is the loss and damage. What is considered to be a success is that the countries did decide to establish an institutional arrangement. And you can see that this is the only place in the decision that they decide to establish something, and not only to enhance or to urge and stuff like that. So here they do adopt a decision to establish the institutional arrangement, which means that the rich countries are going to pay some kind of compensation. It is not called compensation, but some kind of compensations for loss and damages for the developing countries, because the assumption is that they have much loss and damages that is the result of the activity of the developed countries, the rich countries. So just a couple of words about what was left out from the decision, and then I will give the stage to Iris. Several things that were missing from the cover decision and from the decision of this COP. First of all, as I said, we were accepting talks about implementation, how our countries are going to achieve the 1 and 1.5 Celsius goals. We're not there. No country is there. Second, we are long time wishing to see the countries deciding to phase out from fossil fuels. And again, several countries do not agree, and that's why we're still on the stage of phase down, which is to cut the fossil fuels, but not to phase out totally. And a third thing that is very important for us that was missing is a real decision about the biodiversity loss and the ecosystem crisis. We were wishing that countries will decide about preparing a global biodiversity plan or something like that, or we'll have connect this conference to another conference that we will maybe mention later that deals with biodiversity. These things were missing and we didn't see them. So not much of progress in this COP, even though there were some, but I think generally we felt that it was disappointing in that sense. So that's generally about the convention and the conference. And Iris, the stage is yours.
Okay, so this COP for us was the second one. Last year, COP26 was the first COP that the SPNI took part in. It's a little bit maybe sound, I don't know, surprising or weird because climate is a big issue in the SPNI, but we are quite new in this field. But when we started to work on climate and we put it as one of our main goals or main issues that we focus in, we did it in full power. So last year was our first COP. And what we learned from last year that it's not enough just to arrive to the COP, and we should do things before the COP to get prepared to it, and we should be more active and take more advantage in the time that we are in the COP, but we have to prepare it before. So these are I assume that you read what is written here in this slide, and I'm going to go a few words about on every point that we mentioned here. So as I said, it's not enough just to arrive to the COP. We have to get prepared before, and I think it was a month before the COP. We had a kind of workshop, professional workshop here in Israel that was focused on ecosystem restoration and climate change. I mentioned before that we get into the issue of climate quite late, but when we got into it, we understood that our role here in Israel is to promote the understanding, the insight that biodiversity and climate are the two sides of the same coin. And when we got into working in climate, it was not what we found here, even inside the environmental movement. And what we try to do is to promote the inside understanding and the professional knowledge about the connection, the deep connection between biodiversity and climate. And what we see here is a photo from the workshop, professional workshop that took place here in Israel for decision makers, from the government, from municipalities, from NGOs, from other authorities, and we had participants not only from Israel but also from Morocco, from Germany, from Jordan, and this was kind of preparation for the COP. So this was taking place before the COP. During the COP, besides all the, we are not, maybe I'll start differently, we are not part of the, as NGO, we are not part of the official delegations. We don't have an official role in the COP. The COP will go on with us or without us. So we have to find our unique voice or unique place in such a very big occasion. And one of the things that we've done, and it was very effective and very significant, is the cruise. I don't know if cruise is a good word, a sail. We called it cruise, but it's not a touristic cruise. What we've done is a few NGOs from the coalitions against CATSA. CATSA in English is EAPC, which is the Europe-Asia Pipeline Corporation. And they have a plan, I think we spoke about it in one of the former webinars. They have a plan, an agreement to increase the amount of oil that is going to go through the Red Sea to Eilat port, and from there through the pipe to Ashkelon, to the Mediterranean, and from there to Europe. And this is a great threat for the Red Sea and for the coral reefs, the northern coral reefs in the world, a very unique, a beautiful habitat. And what we tried to do, because the COP was taking place in Sharm El-Sheikh in Egypt, in the southern point of the Red Sea, we rented a boat with a few NGOs that are part of the coalition against CATSA or EPC agreement. And we took decision makers, we took participants that came from all over the world to take part in it was around 3 hours cruise. During the cruise, they got explanation about the biodiversity, about the agreement, all the background that is needed. And then we stopped the boat near the coral reef, and we just went into the water to do snorkeling. Now, it's amazing that, we can explain how dangerous and how big the threat, the agreement to the coral reefs and so on. But you don't have to speak much if you just put your eyes under the water for 2 minutes, and you see what a beauty is under the water. It's like a tropical forest under the water, under the sea surface. And it's so convincing, and it just go deep in the heart to those who take part in this cruise. And it's very important, and we have plans to continue it and to do more cruises like this, not in Sharm El-Sheikh, in Eilat, but it's very important. What you can see here is me in the middle here, and with 2 ministers. There were in the cruise that we participated. There were 3 ministers from it's almost the former government, but this is Tamar Zandberg, the Minister for Environmental Protection, and Isawi Frej, the Minister for Regional Cooperation, and there was another minister, not in this photo, and more decision makers. And we did about half an hour snorkeling. And now we are very aware of what is going to happen, because the new government, we don't know what's going to happen with the CATSA agreement. And we know that we have to be prepared that the CATSA agreement will be, or all the, maybe I'll rephrase it, all the achievements that we've got in the former governments are now in threat. And we have to make a lot of efforts to keep these achievements and to avoid from this agreement to become true. So this was a very unique, very important, and very significant activity that we've done through the COP, and it gave us an opportunity to raise awareness for the consequences of for get people from all over the world to hear about the CATSA agreement, and they will be able to help us when we are going to fight again. I hope it's not going to happen, but we are trying to be prepared for it. One more thing that we learned from the former COP, from COP26, is trying to be more active during the COP, and not only to take part in others in side events, but to be initiators of side event, one kind of side event that we take part or we lead. And here you can see photos from a side event that was dedicated to, of course, the connection between nature protection and climate change. A nature-based solution in mitigation, in adaptation. We focused on mainly in two issues. One is urban nature. You can see here Amir Balaban, who is leading this issue in the SPNI. And the other topic was rewilding and reclaiming natural habitats as part of the effort to cope with climate crisis. So this is the side event, and it was very important to expose our knowledge and our experience to participants from all over the world. So this is one more thing that we've done. I think that one of the main things that we came back to Israel from the COP, from the former COP, and from this COP, is studying and importing the knowledge that we see, that we absorb from meetings, from taking part in side events, from the atmosphere that we get in the COP. And then we can come back to Israel and come back to the government, come back to the municipalities and say, hey, we've been in the COP and we heard this and this and this. And it gives us a kind of certificate, or gives us a kind of a
seal of approval.
Yes, an approval to be experts, and people listen us more when we come with this knowledge. Now, in the left photo and the right photo, you can see this lady, a very impressive lady, is the Minister of Environmental Protection in Egypt. And to hear her speaking about the role of nature and the understanding that nature, protecting nature, and especially the coral reefs in the Red Sea, this is the understood in Egypt, that this is the solution, and this is the way, or the main thing to build the Egypt economy of the area, to build it on this, and not on industry and oil transportation and so on. This is a very strong thing to come back to Israel and speak about. And we took part in this occasion, and it was really, it seems maybe something that is not so important, but it gives us a lot of strengths and a lot of tools to achieve, to get to achievements here in Israel when we come back. One more thing is the media. Now, I know that in other countries, developed countries in the world, it's a little bit different, and climate issues and environment as a whole takes a high place in the agenda. In Israel, people speak here about many things these days, of course, about the Mondial and so on, and the elections and political issues and many things. But people in the media, the Israeli media, doesn't speak about environment almost not at all. And we have to fight every day, every week, to put this issue on the right place as we see it. And participating in the COP gives us a kind of a ticket to the prime time. Not enough, but this is the only ticket to the prime time, speaking about climate crisis, biodiversity, and so on, because it's very hard to speak about it in the media in Israel. It's very sad, but this is the situation. And I'm not interested in football so much, but I watch in a very in interest how all the world is focused on, I think it's 11 people chasing the same ball and football. And here we are speaking about climate, we are speaking about our globe, and almost 10 billion people are kicking this ball, and or this globe. In Hebrew it's the same word, kadur, it's the same, we use the same word, and no one cares. And it should be, I think it should be different. So one goal in one of our goals in participating in the COP is to bring this issue to a higher place in the media agenda. You can see here a reporter doing an item that was prepared on the OEPC agreement, and it was it was on TV a few days after we came back. A few more things. It's the first time at the COP that we had an Israeli pavilion. And it was very important. There was a lot of criticism about the pavilion, how much it cost, and so on. But the pavilion was very significant. It was a meeting point for the Israelis, for the Israeli delegation, and it was important by itself. And it was a meeting point. It was in a very good spot in the COP. It was near the US pavilion, and in a very good place, a very good stop, and many people, there was a lot of transportation. Many people just went through. It was an open pavilion. The name of the pavilion was a Climate of Innovation, Israel Climate of Innovation, and there was coffee over there and place to sit, and people went through and stopped in this pavilion, and it was very important. Many things happened in this pavilion, and I hope the next COP will have an Israeli pavilion as well. It's important for me to mention that there are main, I think in general, we can say that there are main three players, groups of players in the COP. Of course, the governments, as Tamara explained, they come to do all the delegations and the agreements and so on, but they are not the only one on the COP. And there are two more players which are not less important. Of course, the NGOs, and I explained what is our role in the COP, and we met colleagues from all over the world. It's very important, it's very empowering, and it's very interesting to see how different, but how similar we work in all over the world. And there were very interesting meetings in the cab, or you ask somebody to take a photo of you and you start to talk, and you find out that there is someone from an NGO from Congo or from whatever all over the world, and you see that we use sometimes the same tools, different problems, different challenges, but the same challenges, and it's very empowering. It's very important, and we exchange knowledge, and we keep in touch after the COP ends, and it's very important. So this is the NGOs, and one more player is the private sector. Now they come. It was in the Israeli delegation. It was a very big part from delegation. Many people from the private sector took part in the COP, and they did a lot of business in the COP. promoting environmental solutions for climate crisis, for climate change. And it's very important because sometimes governments, most of the time, the governments are very slow. They are very given under pressures, as Tamara said, and a lot of lobby. But there are a very strong powers that comes from the private sector, and they come with a lot of money, and they recognize the opportunity and the economic opportunity, and they are willing and ready to invest. And this is a very, very important player. Now, there was a lot of criticism around the COP, greenwash, and Coca-Cola gave sponsorship and so on. And part of the criticism is true. It should not be so this way. And not the menu should be more vegan friendly and so on. But this is not the main thing, and we should focus on the main thing. And the main thing is to see how the private sector, beside the governments, taking part in making the change. And as I said before, the COP doesn't stand alone. It's a very important milestone, but we have to work before the COP and after the COP, because this is only a milestone, and the main goal is to participate the next COP, or to arrive to the next COP with much more significant things that we do, and to arrive to the next COP with more improved things that we've done and achieved, and more achievement than we arrived to this COP. So these are the main things. And Tamara, if you want to add something, or I'll stop the share and we'll open it to questions. And
I'll just add, because there's some questions that were asked, and one of them is the first one is SPNI partnering with other Israeli or non-Israeli NGOs on the COP. So actually, Eric started to talk about it, mentioned several things. So first of all, the answer is yes, definitely. The boat that Eric talked about was an initiative that was organized by several Israeli environmental organizations. We were part of it, we supported it. So it was a very much totally cooperation. Also, the event, the SAI event, was actually a cooperation of several bodies. So yes, also with international. Before we went to the COP, and after, we are having currently all the time cooperation with international nature protection organization, mainly nature protection organization like BirdLife, and which is organizations, I don't know if you know it, but it has partners all over the world. So basically, at the end of the day, we have a network of people from nature protection organization from all around the world, and we have WhatsApp groups, and we update each other, and we send, we collaborated actually in strengthening the message that we want to send to the delegations, so they would put our asks, our request in their decision. So during the COP, there is all the time working by the network of international organizations. We're part of it. How do we, first of all, what do we want to be in the decision? We really sat down and worded several asks, several requests that we wanted. And then each partner is sending it to the delegation from its own country. And so we can have like some kind of network that is pushing, sometimes with success and sometimes not. So that is for the first question.
Okay, well, thank you, Tamara. You actually could take over this role if you'd like to, in general, meet us every couple of Sundays and answer questions before I even get to ask them. But no, I'm glad you're on top of it, and that's the advantage of having two people present. We'll get to there's a few more questions. I see they're piling up as we're speaking. And just want to thank everybody for being with us. We had well over 100 people here on the Zoom, and we got another 15 minutes to delve into a couple more areas. I just want to make a couple quick comments, and then ask a question that we spoke about before the webinar, which needs to be addressed. But first, Iris, I just, you started to make that whole kicking the earth, kicking the ball analogy, and thought you were talking about the World Cup, because in terms of the popularity and what gets done, I mean, if climate change and COP had 1/10 the publicity and interest, at least in the sections of the world we inhabit, I don't know, maybe the United States is a little different, although not at least through the opening round it wasn't, maybe, but the World Cup is such a big thing, and it was so interesting. It was in Qatar, almost right after the COP talks, and the Gulf states are really entering the world stage, and the Gulf area is becoming more and more important, as you talked about, especially for us and especially to save the coral reefs. And the other thing I just wanted to mention, in Iris's last slide, she did not introduce the gentleman she was with at the Israel Pavilion down below, but Gidon Bahar is Israel's ambassador. His title is ambassador. He's Israel's, the foreign ministry's global ambassador for sustainability and climate change. And he will be a guest on this very show, same bat time, same bat channel, Sunday, January 8th at 8 p.m. And he'll be talking about Israel's international commitments and role on the global stage and what he picked up from COP. Very nice guy. He attended the climate change and the ecosystem restoration conference that we put on in Israel, as Iris mentioned that. And just also, while we're promoting the webinars next week, Gili Betzalel, who directs our international connections unit, he will be talking. He was not at COP, but he travels the globe connecting us with environmental NGOs. There was Tamara just answered a question about it. A lot of the connections we make are through Gili's work around the globe and in various international forums. So that will be our talk next week. And then we have a 2-week break. Turns out the Sunday after that is Christmas and the Sunday after that is New Year's Day. So we're taking a 2-week break, and then Gidon Bahar will be January 8th. Anyway, back to the first question I want to ask. Before we get to these questions, I'm taking prerogative of the speaker. And people have asked me, and we have many friends from Toronto on the Zoom today. And it was from Toronto that I heard from people, wondered why was SPNI not present at the UN's, are they called COP, or the UN's COP biodiversity talks? They have COP climate change talks. This was the 27th year, and I understand the 15th year for the COP biodiversity talks in Toronto. And what's up with that?
It's a good question. We got an invitation to take part in this COP, but we understood and we thought maybe we should take part in it, participate in this COP or not. But we decided that we don't have much to contribute to this in participating in this COP. I've seen one of the questions. Israel took the government took part in this COP, and there were representatives for the Ministry of Environment in the biodiversity COP. But we as NGO, we decided not to take part in it. Maybe next year, in the coming year, we will decide differently. I think that this COP should be, I don't know why, but it didn't become so popular or so known as the climate COP, and maybe it should be. And in the conversation we've done the talk before this webinar, we thought that maybe they should be united to the same COP, because as we know, biodiversity and climate change are the same sides of the same coin, and they should be dealt and managed and solved together. It's not only my words, it's the words of the best experts in the world. So maybe in the coming years, it should be so.
I would add that Israel is part of the Convention for the Biodiversity. The COP27 is the conference for the parties for the Climate Change Convention. Israel is part of that. Israel is also part of the Convention for Biodiversity, and the COP15 is the conference for the parties for this convention. And as Iris said, it's questionable why are this not as popular in this, and how should they be connected? And one of the requests and the asks at the COP27 was exactly that the delegation would send clear message to the COP15, to the biodiversity COP, about what is requested regarding biodiversity for climate change mitigation and adaptation.
Interesting. Well, I hope that it comes to pass that they become part of the same conference, and that we will continue to have a voice there. So let's just go through a few questions now. Wendy, who Iris, especially, I'm sorry you missed her on the mission. Wendy is a plant biologist who studied at Hebrew U, has had a lot of knowledge that we found very interesting, was very active on the mission, and said she's going to be back this summer. So Wendy, I hope you get a chance to meet Iris and Tamara. And I think they answered your question about Israeli and non-Israeli NGOs. A lot of cooperation. It's a tight movement. I really have to say, it's not tight in their issues, but compared to other movements in Israel, like in the education sphere, for example, and we're also in the education sphere, but in the general education sphere, for example, so many NGOs competing with so many agendas and so many conflicts, and there are a lot of areas like that in Israel, and I think the environmental movement relatively has its act together, and we're a strong part of that. So listen, Michael Klein asked about the gas deposits, and we worked out an agreement with Lebanon exploiting this resource. How do we feel about this? Iris and Tamara was part of your background as well, so I'm curious. And I mean, it's a very general question. I don't think he's talking specifically about the agreement with Lebanon, but how do you guys feel about it?
It's an agreement about the border between the economic exclusive zone between Israel and Lebanon. As I know, it doesn't change anything about gas and oil exploration and so on. The agreement was only about the boundary between the two countries. Now, the reservoir is the same reservoir of gas and oil, not oil, gas, as we know. But this was the agreement, so we didn't took part in it. We oppose to the search and exploration of gas and oil in the sea. We think that we should not do more exploration of gas and oil in the sea, but the agreement with Lebanon doesn't relevant to it.
Right.
Yeah, because right. I would add that the reservoir that is there is already there. It's found. So the question and the border question, it was an economic question, basically. Who is going to exploit more? Who is going to get more? And so that is that. And if we're talking about going to search new reservoir, new deposit that were not discovered yet, we're very much opposed to that.
Right. And, just in a sentence, both of you, how are we doing on, we had so many protests, it feels like a decade ago, and we were so worried about, the potential pollution to the Mediterranean and the risks. And well, how do you guys feel about what we've done in the decade, it seems like, since we found and are beginning to utilize natural gas and export it? Big question, but just, I mean, what's your sense? Are we doing okay? I mean, it's a bridge to renewables, and right now with the Ukrainian war, we better the gas than coal. I mean, we're thinking about it nowadays, because the thing is that when we look 12 years ago, like 2010, when the deposit were just found, right. The big natural gas deposit Tamar, when they were found, then we didn't have enough renewable and good enough renewables. So the environmental movement, and I think SPNI part of it, was kind of in a position that this should be our bridge. Today we are in a different place, because today we understand that as long as we have this bridge, nothing else is going to be really developed enough. So we believe today we have to put an end to the bridge.
yes, we need this bridge, but that's it. Now the renewables are good enough, they're stable enough, we can have them enough, and we must put an end at a certain stage to this bridge. So we did change the position in that sense. Yeah.
Thank you.
And we focus more on protected areas, especially on protected areas that should be clean of any activity that
marine protected areas, nature reserves in the sea. 3D nature reserves, yes.
And we have a very nice achievement in this area because the first protected area or natural reserve was declared just a month or 2 months ago in the EEZ, in the Economic Exclusive Zone of Israel, which is very nice and very important achievement. And about 2 weeks after this declaration, I forget the name, but there was Energian that I think it's Energian that got a lease, I think you say, to do exploration in this area. Canceled it. They just moved back. So the declaration works, and an area, a very important and sensitive area in the sea, was protected.
Thank you. So those were both great answers. Bob Schloss asked a really interesting question. In the US, have you guys read it? A specialized nonpartisan NGO's sole mission is to provide legal, economic, geological, biological expertise to staff and members of Congress on sustainability policy and assessments. Any talk of doing something like that in Israel? Seems a little big for us. I'm not sure, as a country.
If we do consulting for the government,
if we would get together with other NGOs and create a nonpartisan and also not connect, like sort of an umbrella group. I guess the umbrella group of Life and Environment, if it produced papers, would be sort of considered that as a nonpartisan.
We don't really have in Israel a think tank as in the US generally. We do have several, but it's not as developed as. There is one organization, environmental organization, that is a little bit more into the research, like I think the Israeli Association for Ecological, but they're also not in a think tank. So we sometimes collaborate for a specific purpose. We don't have the resources that think tank have in the US. There is in the Parliament of Israel, there is a Center for Research, and they make policy papers that their aim is something like that. If a parliament member is asking for knowledge about something, they do the research, and they provide such policy. But actually, I think an environmental think tank is something that is quite still required in Israel, and we don't really have.
Interesting, very interesting. Never thought about that. Thanks.
We used to have a think tank like this that we initiated on open spaces in the 90s. And it was a very effective one, but and there is a very important role of the academia, which is not really significant in Israel, and it's a little bit absent. But I think that even it's not formal in Israel, I can see that we as NGOs, the SPNI and more NGOs, when we are doing good work, professional work, and we do, and we bring new things, and we do it quickly, and we establish explained professional policy papers. It has a very good influence, and it's very effective. And in many cases, even though we are NGOs, we lead. Now we lead in the deep waters of Israel, kind of survey. The government should do it, but we lead a kind of a workshop and a survey and surveys and policy and professional work on what happens in the deep sea. The government should do it, but we do it, and the government follows us, and they part of the workshops, and at the end of the day, they're going to adapt it and say it's theirs. So it happens. More than and not only once. It happens every few years in new issues that we choose to deal with. So it's not a formal framework, but it happens.
Right. Okay, we just got a couple minutes left, and there's a good question to end with. I haven't actually checked the chats in the last couple minutes, but did any Israeli private sector organizations, I believe that means businesses, make any significant promises to address climate change?
I don't know how to measure it.
In their business practices, I mean, in terms of funding, I think the answer is no, nothing very significant.
No.
In terms of business practices, have you guys noticed anybody changing? I mean, PepsiCo bought SodaStream, and SodaStream's a great change from the PepsiCo business model. But you know, are there any other examples like that?
I think that there are few things. There are different companies from the private sector that took part or participated in the COP. We met, for example, people from ICL, which is one of the most polluting companies in Israel. What they're going to do from what they saw and learned in the COP, I don't know. I hope they're going to do better, but
that's Israeli Chemicals, you mean, right?
Yes, it's Israeli company, chemicals company or whatever. But it's not going to help or fix what they do from the source. I know that there are other companies like Azrieli Group, which do real estate, and they do have more environmental norms that they use in their routine, and they came to study and to see what they can study from others. There is another group which was very significant during the COP, all the Israeli startups that focus on solutions for climate change, and all the renewable energies, and all kind of new solutions for agriculture, and all kinds of startups that it's hard to imagine how many solutions and startups rise in Israel. To measure how they're effective or how they're successful or how much they contribute to the climate change, I don't know. I can't tell. I don't know if there's anyone that can tell or how we can measure it. But it's good to see that money moves to the right direction, and it's important message.
It is, and may that part of it grow as well. Well, we're over our time limit here. There are a couple last-minute questions. Paul Kay, a former board member of ours in Canada, asks about, without Alon Tal in the next Knesset, who are going to be our allies there? And I know that's an issue that we've been talking about and dealing with. It's not just Alon Tal. We've lost a lot of Knesset members. We've lost Meretz, among other things. But stay tuned, I'd say. Let's Iris a quick answer to that.
We're mapping the opportunities, and we try to find who we can work with. We can't stop. Show must go on. So we are trying to do the best, and we get help from people from the right wing to help us to see who we can work with on things that we can do together. It will be challenging.
Great. Well, stay tuned. We'll have a webinar about that early next year as well, on the new Knesset and our work, maybe with a new lobbyist or a new old lobbyist, and lots of interesting stuff coming up. Thank you, Tamara and Iris, very much, and thanks for the many people watching and participating and engaging with us tonight from all over from Boston and Ossining and Charlottesville and South Orange and Toronto and California, and especially the planet, as somebody wrote. We are all here sharing the planet. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, David Amichai at home in Jerusalem for back office. And we'll see you next week, just a week from now. Gili Betzala will be here Sunday night, 8 p.m. So hope to see everybody back. Thanks, everybody, very much. Good evening.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.